We've been in the series on Grow, and what we've been doing with the series is we're really willing to help us understand the purposes that God has for us as a church, and not just limit it to spiritual jargon, but to look at really the purposes that God has and how he wants us to grow. And so we've said the 5 things that we're going to make sure happen in each person's life is to help us know God. That knowing God, that is not just a religious thing. We are not about religion. We are about knowing God, experiencing him, encountering him, having him in our lives. And that's what Sunday morning is about. Sunday morning, we're here to help each other know God, to encounter him, to experience him, to hear his voice, how he speaks to us, how he works in us. We also talked about how we want to help you find your people. That's our commitment. Help you find your people, that life is truly lived better in circles than in rows, that we need relationships. We cannot live life in isolation. It doesn't work. We need other people in our lives speaking value and encouragement and helping us find greatness. And so life groups are so critical that we have an opportunity to connect with other people. We've also been talking about how we want you to experience freedom. That's what God wants for your life. He doesn't want us to walk into tomorrow with baggage, but to deal with the things that happened in our yesterdays so we can experience freedom every day of our lives. Some of us even know we've had a moment of freedom, but then life kind of builds up. It's just, you have to do laundry, amen, right? Right? And there are moments that we come together to let God find freedom in us and help us to find the fullness of what the life that he has for us. That's why we have freedom groups that we encourage you to be a part of and to work together. But we also have marriage mentors and classes like financial peace and other things that come alongside and say, hey, we want to have freedom for what God has for us to move forward. Next week, we're going to be talking about how important it is to make a difference. We just did that today. What just happened today was a part of making a difference. That when you come and you serve other people, you are part of making a difference. So whether you're on a serve team, whether you're part of Kingdom Builders, that we have a global impact by what we do. And we don't always understand. In fact, next week, we are going to be launching something. You saw the video about a partnership that we are having with One Child. Now, One Child is an organization that kind of met, and we've been working with them for over a year. And we're partnering with 3 churches, 3 Assembly of God churches, kind of our same tribe, in Choluteca, Honduras. And in Choluteca, Honduras, it's a community that really is a great opportunity for the gospel to come into that community. I met all 3 of these pastors, visited all 3 of these churches. We have some videos that we're going to show you next week about these locations and about the children in these communities. And what we're going to do is it's an opportunity for us to come alongside of them and to sponsor children and to make a difference in those neighborhoods, work with those churches, help them for a long-term connection. What I love, one of the communities, right now they don't have running water in that community. They have a kind of a water tower that the city comes out on a somewhat regular basis, and they fill the water tower, and then people can get water from that location. And how amazing would it be as we work forward and work together that CR First helps provide water through the church for that people. What a better place to have living water than through the local church that helps make that provision. I love the pastor there. He is amazing. He has a heart for the lost and church planting. He actually teaches at a Bible college and helps train other pastors. And he's like, no, I could be anywhere, but God has called me here. And I want to partner with those kind of people, and we can make a difference together. And today we're going to talk about discovering your purpose. And that's why we're talking about launching. You're going to hear more about this. In fact, a year from now, in our regular video announcements, you're going to hear about Grow Track. It's something you're going to hear every week, just like you hear about the connection card every week. You're going to hear about Grow Track because we want every person to go through the Grow Track. It is part of the process of helping you discover your purpose, what God has for you. And we know it's going to be a few people every week, about 20 people, we hope, every week that will go through that. We get some opportunities for a few people to go through it early on together. And we're going to help you take steps towards what God's called you to, not just feel like you have to take big leaps. And it's so cool what God is opening up opportunities for us. And here's my promise to you, that if you go on this journey with us, you're coming on Sunday mornings, you're going to know God. That you go through a freedom group, you're going to have experience freedom. That if you find a life group, that you're going to find your people. And that as you go through Grow Track, you're going to discover your purpose. As you serve other people and you do those things, if you take a year-long process and do it, your life will forever be different. I'm just going to tell you, your life will be so different than what your life is today. what you've experienced now. God has got some things that he wants to do through us at CR First, in this community, in this region, that I really believe that he's called us to create a movement where lives are going to be changed. Not just a place where we come to church and we like our church that we come to, but we are the church, and together we're creating opportunities for Jesus to work in people's lives. I don't know about you, but I want to be a part of that. All right? I want to be a part of that. And it's okay for you to clap and say, yeah, I'm okay with that too, Pastor. Yeah, that's good. All right. All right. We can talk to each other. One of my favorite stories is it's a simple, cute little story. And it's about some animals that live in one particular forest. And these different animals got together, and they're like, you know what? We really want to be like the best forest there is. It's kind of like, school districts, but forest districts. And they're like, we want to be the best of the best of the best. And so the way that we can do that is we want our kids to have opportunities that we didn't have. We want them to have experiences and skill sets. We want them to be well-rounded in what they do and how they work. And so they decided they were going to start a school. They're going to start this little animal school. And they got together and they worked on the curriculum and what the curriculum should be. And so they worked everything out, and it was the first day of school, and little Rabbit was all excited. He was just couldn't hardly contain himself, his little back legs like thumping, and he's just ready. And I was like, "You ready for school?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I can't wait. I'm going to see my friends. I'm going to see duck. And I'm going to see badger. And I'm going to see eagle. And it's going to be the best. And my first class is running. I love running. Oh, I love running. That's my first class. It's going to be so good." And so he jets out to school, and sure enough, first class period is running, and he loved it. He just gets to run and run and run, and he was the best runner in his class day one. And then second period came, and it was swimming. And he didn't love swimming quite as much because, he's got these little tiny front legs and big back legs, and it was work. And, little duck was like, "Oh, I love swimming class." And he's just like paddling his legs and going. And so the end of the day came. He comes back home. Mom was like, "How was school?" "School was awesome. I love school. It's so great. I loved running class. I was the best runner in my class. I didn't like swimming. So I don't like swimming very much." Mom's like, "No, stick at swimming. You're going to get better at it, and because you need to be well-rounded, and that's what you'll get good at it." Well, a couple weeks into school, he's excelling in running, and little duck's excelling in swimming, and all the different animals that they're kind of going throughout their day. And the teacher pulls little Rabbit aside and says, "You are doing so well in running. In fact, you're the best runner we have, but you are falling way behind in swimming. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull you out of running class, and we're going to put you in 2 sections of swimming class to help you be a better swimmer." And so they put him in 2 classes, and when he gets home by the end of the day, he's so tired and he's worn out and he's gulping, just for air to try to make things happen. And several weeks now into the first semester, and all the kids are coming home a little worn out. Duck is so tired, or little Rabbit's so tired he can hardly run afterwards. The duck has ripped up his feet because they put him in extra running classes, and so his webbed feet are all kind of ripped up and sore, and he has a hard time even swimming. Eagle's been expelled for cheating because in the climbing class he kept just flying right up and he wouldn't climb. And all of the children were average. And the problem that we have, I think, in our world and in our lives and in our culture is we forget that God has created each of us for a specific purpose. God has created you for an incredible purpose. He's created you uniquely. He's gifted you specially. He has not created you to be like everything. In fact, he has placed something remarkable in each and every person that's here. That each of you has something so remarkable in your lives. In fact, Paul, when he was writing to the Romans in chapter 12, he says this. He says, "It is in his grace. In his grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well." Do you know that God has given you, as an act of grace, the capacity to do things well? He has put within you, because he loves you, because he wants to have grace towards you, the capacity to do things remarkable. He's wired you. He's placed those things within you. And the problem is, though, I think there's way too many of us that don't know what he's placed in us. And we use the gifts wrongly. We don't use them correctly. It's kind of like when our kids were little. One of the things I was kind of fixated on, I don't know, maybe it was just me, but I always liked to buy toys for our kids that were way too old for them. They're probably the toys I wanted, and so I remember I kept wanting to buy remote control cars for them when they were like 2, wrong age, but I would buy them and well, maybe they'll like it and this will be fun. And they'd open the present and they'd see the little remote control car. And then a little bit later, the car was not being played with, but that box was getting a ton of use. Right? Like they're playing with the box, and this is where the little people go, and this is where the car is just like, it breaks. It broke before they even really got a chance to ever use it, and it wasn't used correctly. And I think it's that way when it comes to a lot of us, when it comes to living this full life that God has for us. God has created us to live a life on purpose, for a purpose, and he's put these things within us, but we don't always use the gifts that he's created for us correctly. And partly is because we have an enemy in our world, in our culture, and against us, and there are some enemies of purpose that all of us encounter. All of us encounter these different enemies in different ways, and one of the enemies of purpose is contentment. We a lot of times that we're so enjoying our simple life. Like, life is good. It's fine. And I enjoy what it is. And we just kind of settle in, and this is my routine. Or we get so busy that we get fixated with the busyness, and we're like, if I try to put one more thing in my life, I'm going to explode. And we just settle in for the ride. And we do kind of things day after day, and it's kind of our routine, and we're just kind of content with the routine. We're kind of content with the moment. And before we know it, time goes by, and we think that our career is our calling. But our career is not our calling. Our career is not our purpose. Our purpose is even not found in the weekend. I talk to a lot of people who are like, oh man, I'm doing what I have to do, but then I'll get to the weekend, and I'll be able to have some fun with my friends. I'm going to relax, and I'm going to do all the things that I really want to do, my hobbies and all that. Or we work towards retirement, and we're saying, well, then I'm just going to retire, and I got all this time for myself, and I can go, on the beach, or I can travel, or I can just be with my grandkids, and I'm just going to settle in to something that even for some people it's a boring and a routine or just the daily grind. And we get content, we're just saying that's what it is. That's all that we have. But Paul says this in 2 Corinthians 4. He's writing to the church. He says, no. This is why we never give up. Though our bodies are dying, our spirits are being renewed every day. Every day. God has something new for you. He has a purpose for you every day. This isn't just a once this happened and now you're on a trajectory for the rest of your life. This is my path. No, every day God is renewing something. Every day God is waking something up in you. We had a student that we knew for years. He was bright. He was a Division I athlete, and then he finished his MBA, and he came and he lived in our basement for a while. And part of the reason he lived in our basement is because he just didn't know what he wanted to do for a job. And so he was looking for a job, and he moved to Minneapolis, and he's like, maybe I can find a job here. And I remember talking to him several times, and I'm like, buddy, what's going on? Why are you afraid to get a job? And why are you struggling like you're struggling? And he just looked at me and he's like, I am so afraid of getting the wrong job that I'm just going to be stuck in that position and in that career, and maybe it's not the right purpose for me. It took a while before I looked at God's renewing your purpose every day. You start something, and just remember, God can't steer a parked car, You need to start moving, and you can change jobs. Oh, it's a remarkable thought. But sometimes we get stuck in this mindset that, no, this is what it is, this is what I have, this is all that I can do. And we miss the fact that God is constantly evolving us, constantly developing us, constantly growing in our purpose. How many of us even sometimes are more comfortable watching TV for long amounts of hours than we are chasing after our purpose? Can I tell you this? There is not one person in this room that your purpose is to watch television. It's not your purpose. You were not created to watch football. You were not created to just sit and watch a drama or America's Got Talent or whatever it is. They're enjoyable to watch, but that's not our purpose. And we get content with going through the motions, and we miss out on the purpose that God has placed within us. Another enemy of our calling and understanding our purpose is just confusion. In fact, I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations, even in the lobby here, that people are just like, I just wish I knew what God had for my life. I've just been asking God, would you just show me what you have for my life? And they're looking, and what I notice as we talk a lot about it, is what they're really saying is, Pastor, you're up there and you speak in front of everybody, and Pastor Jonathan's up there and he's singing. A lot of people are looking for a platform. They're looking for a platform to be their calling. Where's my platform that other people can know me, that other people can notice me? Over the years, I've spent a lot of time working. This is probably one of my favorite things to do, is help people discover their calling, discover their purpose. And I've worked with a lot of young college students, and especially the young men. And when we have this conversation, what most of them tend to say is, I'm good at sports. I play sport ball. I like to run and hit things and throw stuff. I'm good at sport ball. Or maybe I'm good at music. I can sing. I can hit notes, and I bang drums pretty good. Like they get fixated on a performance. Like, I can perform well in this. And it takes a while for me to dig with them and ask questions. Like, wait a minute. What is it about you that makes you perform well? How do you see things? And after a while, they start to realize, I'm really good at making quick decisions. I'm really good at seeing the bigger picture. I'm really good at seeing how other pieces fit together and create harmony. I'm really good at noticing all these other details. Like, I remember an interview with Michael Jordan years ago, and I remember the first time I heard him talk about how in the middle of a basketball game, he will watch the weight distribution of his opponent's feet, and as his opponent that he's going against shifts their weight slightly, that he can change direction immediately. Okay, that's what it wasn't just a talent, it's the ability to notice detail. And sometimes we get confused about our calling because we look at the wrong area. We don't lean into what God has for us. I love, and we get worried about the wrong things. And we want a platform or a destination. But God's saying, no, I've wired you for a relationship, and I've wired you for something special. I love how the Message translation puts this in Proverbs chapter 29. It says this way. It says, if people can't see what God is doing, they stumble all over themselves. But when they attend to what he reveals, they are most blessed. When they attend to what God reveals, they are most blessed. Do you know what? To discover your purpose, it takes work. God's just not handing it to you. You have to attend to what he reveals. You have to put attention to it. You have to put work to it. You have to put effort to it. God, how have you wired me? Maybe I'm good at sport ball, but really what I'm really good at is how do I connect this person to this person? I'm really good at making decisions and analyzing things quickly. How many know that there's a lot of ways that can be put to work? There's a lot of things where that skill set can happen. This is why we utilize things like, for example, I'm a strength performance coach. I've been certified with Gallup organization when it comes to how people are wired and their strengths. And there's things like an Enneagram and other things that are like these ancient, they've been around the church for a long time, helping people discover kind of how God's wired them. Now, all models are wrong in some way, shape, or form, but most of them do help us. They help us discover a vocabulary for ourselves. They help us know that this is how we're wired. They help you to know if you're a rabbit, you should not be in swimming class, right? If you're a dog, you should not be in climbing class. You should be playing with people. And we want to help you. You need to put yourself in a place where God can use what you're wired to do the most effectively. And if you don't attend to what God's doing in your life, you're going to be confused about it. If you don't listen to what God's doing in your life and saying to you, you're going to be confused. A third enemy of our purpose is this whole sense of comparison. It's amazing how often we have people that just say, well, I wish I was like that person. I wish I was like them. Look at them. They've got all of this talent and capacity. And for me, this last week I sat in a room of all these high-end leaders. And it would have been really easy for me to look around and go, man, I wish I had that level of organization and that way of communicating. And one of the things over the years I've always gone, I wish I was funny. I really do. I wish I was funny. If you have a friend that's just like, they just say things and you laugh and you're just like, they're funny. I'm silly. And in my silliness, I do things that people laugh at, but it's not because I'm funny, right? I know that about myself. And it could be one of those things that we look at other people and say, I wish I had that. But I love what Anna Quinlan says. She's a writer, and writers just have a great gift of wording things correctly. And she says, give up on being perfect and work on becoming yourself. Paul writes it this way in Romans 12. He says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. We've got to quit looking on Instagram and Facebook and seeing how this person compares to that person and how this person speaks this way and comparing all those things. Because what we tend to do is we look at other people and we see we judge them by what we don't know about them, and we judge ourselves by what we know about us. And we look at other people and we see what they have, and we judge ourselves by what we're missing. God doesn't look at you and judge you by what you're missing. He looks at you and celebrates with what you have. It's like so many, you could go to, if you like going to the beach, and then one particular vacation, you go to the mountains, and in the mountains, you're there, and you're looking at all the beautiful things, you're like, yeah, it's all right, but there's no place to surf. Or you go to the woods because you like the peaceful, quiet, and serene nature of, up in the North Woods and fishing on the lake, and you're like, yeah, it's great, but there's really no view here. There's no mountains that you can climb and see. We don't judge those things but for what they're missing. We judge them for what they have. The beautiful things in life, we celebrate it because of what it has. And we need to understand that there are things that are placed within you that are remarkable, that are beautiful. And you need to receive what God has placed in you, not look and say, what am I missing? It's such an important part that we see that because God celebrates what's in you. I think one of the other enemies of understanding purpose and our calling is the whole concept of counterfeit callings and counterfeit purpose. Now, if something's counterfeit, I don't know if you, but not too long ago, I was someplace and I want to pay something. I don't even remember what bill I had. And somebody's like, well, we're not accepting those bills right now. There's been a lot of counterfeits around here recently. And a counterfeit is something that somebody makes who is not authorized to make it. Right, it's a painting. Somebody else painted the painting to look like the original painting, but they weren't the original author or creator of the painting. They're not the author of it. And what happens is too many times we try to create our own sense of purpose, our own sense of calling in our lives, so to speak. And we forget that the only person who's qualified to create our calling and our purpose is God. And we counterfeit God's work in our lives. And we try to pull things out and we say, this is what I want. And we define our own stories with self-centered and maybe a self-produced sense. Like we like to build a business or we want to chase after some things. And we might even be very successful with it, very articulate with what we have and what we utilize and what we have. But it's a counterfeit. Rick Warren, many of you might be familiar with a book he wrote a couple years ago called Purpose-Driven Life. He wrote this book, and it became the number one bestseller of all time, anywhere. And one of the things that comes along with writing the best-selling book is a lot of money. And he said the money wasn't really too hard to deal with because he and his wife talked, and they're like, well, this isn't ours. The concept of the book was God's concept. We just shared what's in God's word, and so this is God's money anyway, so they just gave it away. And so the first thing they did is they just paid back everything that the church had ever paid them for a salary. They paid that amount back to the church. And then they set up a foundation, and they didn't buy a new car, they didn't buy a new house, and then they became reverse tithers. And they said, we're gonna give 90% of our income away, and we're gonna live on 10%. Because this money isn't ours anyway. We don't wanna have a counterfeit sense. He said, but the bigger deal that was harder to deal with was the notoriety. Because when you write something that popular, the notoriety, this attention, this fame, all of a sudden everybody wants to hear from you and talk to you and listen to you, and you've got this voice and this platform. And he said he had to realize that the reason God gave him a platform was so that he could speak for those who aren't listened to. That it wasn't his platform for his own selfishness, his own fame, his own attention, that God had given him that platform. See, he could have built a counterfeit sense of calling. right? He had success. He had all these things. But he said, no. This is God's calling. This is God's purpose. And so God still needs to be the one that's celebrated in this. In Romans chapter 8, again, Paul is writing to the church, and he says, we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them. For God knew his people in advance, and he chose them to become like his son, so that his son would be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. You see, your story is God's story, and he invites you to be a part of it. He invites you to be a part of his story, which is way more remarkable than anything you could create on your own. No matter how hard you try to live a life of purpose, discover your purpose, and create it on your own, you will never create on your own what God has already written, what God has already purposed for you, what God has already placed inside of you. This is ultimately a stewardship issue. To discover purpose is a stewardship issue. God, what have you given? How am I using it? What have you given to me and how am I using this? Remember, you were created on purpose for a purpose. God has placed remarkable things in you, and he has chosen, and we see this throughout the entire scripture from the very beginning. God chooses to show the world who he is through you. Have you ever wondered why God doesn't just like show up? Like, God, it would be a whole lot easier if you just like, hey, here I am. Like, people would believe in you then. Like we would be, like, it would be remarkable. Like, there's God. Hey, let's go. I'm filtering myself. My brain just went sideways for a second. I want to talk about Jesus showing up on toast. You ever heard of those people that people say Jesus shows up on toast? Those people are crazy. Okay, let's just put it what it is. If God is limited to a piece of toast, that is way too small of a God. All right, we're going to go back to where we were. But we would love it if God showed up big. But God has said from the very beginning, no, I'm going to show the world who I am by the way you interact with me. And the way you interact with others is going to show people me. Look at what he says in 1 Corinthians 12. We talked about the last part of this verse last week. And if you weren't here last week, I really encourage you to go online and to listen to the message and take the 40 minutes just to say, hey, God, help me understand how you've created us all to work together. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 4, he says, God's various gifts are handed out everywhere, but they all originate in God's Spirit. God's various ministries are carried out everywhere, but they all originate in God's Spirit. God's various expressions of power are in action everywhere, but God himself is behind it all. And if you underline anything in your Bible or you're taking notes, you need to underline this next phrase. Because look what it says. It says, each person is given something to do that shows who God is. You need to say that with me. Just say it with me. Each person is given something to do that shows who God is. You have been given something. There's something placed inside of you that shows other people who God is. I mean, think about that for a second. That through you, people will see God. Through you, people will encounter God. Through you, people will come to know God. If you're calling for God to make a change and to do something, you just need to understand that you are a conduit for what God's doing. Think of how many people have been praying for the people in the Bahamas that were impacted by that massive hurricane that swept through. It was just devastating. And we've been praying, God, will you do something? Will you do the miraculous in the Bahamas? Will you come and will you help those people? And do you realize that as part of our church that we've been giving, and when we give with Convoy of Hope, one of our partners, and so we said we're giving towards Convoy of Hope and making a difference. I was with one of their representatives this week, and he said as of Wednesday, they already sent 23 plane loads worth of supplies to the Bahamas. That 90,000 meals had already been given out and distributed. Do you realize you were a part of that? You were a part of an answer to prayer of someone in the Bahamas saying, God, we need help. And people of CR First, you came in and you were a part of that answer. Like that's why we give. It's why we share. It's why we're a part of that. It is so critical that we understand that the way that we work is that God is working in us and through us. Here's where your purpose comes. Your purpose comes at the intersection between where the world has an incredible need and you have great gladness. What you were wired to do, what you were equipped to do, what you were created to do. And when what you were created to do meets the need that's in the world, beautiful things happen. Because God breathes through you in that moment. How many know that we live in a world that needs love? All right? Do you know that you can show someone else love this week and you're showing them God? That you can show someone mercy this week and you're showing them God. When you're showing someone peace this week, you are showing them God. It's basically what the world needs done, connected to what you are able to do that reflects God. That is your sweet spot. That's where your purpose comes alive. I love the verse, and it's not in your notes, but it's a life verse for me in 2 Corinthians 3:18. It says, so all of us have had this veil removed so that we can see and reflect the glory of the Lord. And the Lord, who is a spirit, makes us more and more like him, that we are changed into his glorious image. What that verse and the verse in 1 Corinthians 12 is saying is basically each of us is like a little mirror, right? Each of us is just like one of these little mirrors, that we are in a time ready to shine. There's a spot of us that resonates with who God is. And then when we line our lives up with who God is, it shines his light into that moment. That we show when we're in the line at the grocery store, that you can show peace, that you can show joy. When you are at work this week, that some of you have the capacity to show great organization in the midst of chaos. God is beautiful at that. He's incredibly gifted at that, creating new ideas and new ways and perspectives of doing things. That when you line up your life with who Jesus, how he's created you, and you shine it, amazing things happen. In fact, in my office, I keep this in the corner all the time because it's a reminder to me that in and of myself, I can only show just a little bit about who God is. But when all of us gather together, each of us our own little mirror, our own little reflection of who God is, that the community then sees a bigger picture of who God is. That I'm a part of something and I can shine his light. And I always got to be careful because I can blind somebody pretty quickly, reflect the light right onto you. But that each of us is a part. And as we gather together and we show who God is during the week, all of a sudden this person and that person connects and God works through us. I remember I got a friend who's pastoring a church up in Alaska, and he had some people that been coming to their church like crazy. So one of the things that happened is this one guy showed up one Sunday, goes, "Why are you here?" He goes, "Well, I had 4 to 5 people this week. I was getting my hair cut, and the person who was cutting my hair says, 'Hey, you got to come to this church. There's great things happen.'" She was the nicest person I've ever had my hair cut with, and it was fun, and we laughed a lot. And then I was at this shop, and I was doing a business call, and I was interacting with this guy, and he was organized, and he was just really sharp. And he said, "Hey, you should come to my church. We got some great things happen." Then I went over here, and I met this person. They said, "Hey, you should come to this church." And by the end of the week, I'm like, well, I guess I should come to that church. Because together we create a bigger picture of what God's up to, of what God's saying. And as when we're in alignment with him, beautiful things happen. That's why we need to understand your design reveals your destiny. Your design reveals your destiny. You don't have to be like other people. You need to resonate with what God's placed in you and how he wants to work in you. Every piece of you helps God. And this is the thing. So many times we think we got to be special for God to use us. All we need to do is say yes. That's all he wants, is for us just to say yes. Bob Goff I'm going to tell one of his story in a second. And the story really birthed out of this concept. He is an attorney. He's a consulate for the country of Uganda. And one of the things he realized, he goes, I got all these degrees, I got all these other accolades in my life. But that every day he understood that God is inviting him into an adventure. It's not about his job, but God's inviting him into an adventure. And he realized it's not a trip where he sends us with a rigid itinerary. He simply invites us. God asks, what is it that makes us made to show love? What is it that captures our attention? What feeds the deep, indescribable need of our souls to experience the richnesses of the world that he made? And then he simply leans over and he whispers, let's go do that together. Let's go do that together. What is it that God's created in you? I think to really help you understand who God's shaped you to be, there's just some simple questions you have to ask. You have to pursue, because we're waiting for God to hand it to us. And God's saying, no, just join me. watch and lean in and you'll see what it is. Like, for example, what abilities do you naturally possess? What is it that you're just naturally good at, that you've got capacity for? I had a former student, and he was an incredible communicator, gifted communicator, and he thought as a result that he should be a pastor, right? If I'm going to be a communicator, I grew up, I'm a Christian, I should be a pastor. So he was a pastor for a few years, and then he realized that's not really how I'm wired. I don't want to be a pastor. There's a lot of other stuff in this that's not, I like communicating. So he went back to school, and he got a master's of fine arts, and he realized I'm really good at communicating with written word in creative ways, and became a poet. And he started teaching at a university. In fact, he taught with me at a Christian college for several years. But as he was doing that, he even began, you know what I'm really good at? Is I'm really good at helping people who don't know God see God in a way that they didn't even know they were looking at him. And he's actually one of the top poets in the country right now. He's got several things that have been published. People bring him in, and now he's starting at a secular school. He started one of the top Masters of Fine Arts programs that he's been able to start and lean into because he's gifted at it. He's gifted at writing. He's gifted at telling God's story in a creative way. You need to ask, what is it that you're motivated to do? What is it that encourages you and drives you? This last week, I got a rare opportunity to be at the University of Oklahoma and got to spend time with the strength and conditioning coach there. He's a believer, and he was telling his story, and I got to talk to him and his wife about their story a little bit. And one of the things he said, he's motivated to help people be healthy. That was what he's motivated to do. And he'd kind of gotten to the point in his professional career where he had his own gym in Texas, and he was like, he was wrestling. Is there something more for me to do? Maybe I want to do more. And he said, I'm spending most of my day just doing classes for soccer moms. That's what he said, you know. And finally, there was one particular morning, he just went, you know what, God? If all you want me to do is to help soccer moms and overweight dad bods have a little bit better shape, I'll do it. Because I'm passionate about that, I'll do it. It says 2 hours after he surrendered that to God, he got a phone call offering him a position at the University of Oklahoma. But it came to that point where he's like, I need to surrender. He goes, if I wouldn't have surrendered, I don't think I ever would have gotten that phone call. I was passionate about it, but I wasn't seeking the platform. God worked through me in that moment, and he was motivated to do that. Well, some of you need to ask, what pain has strengthened you? Some of you have gone through some of the most stinging experiences in life, and God has walked you through it, and you're on the other side of it, and you have a perspective through things for going through an abortion, or you've been abused, or you have gone through some mental health problems, or you've had some incredible financial difficulties, where you've had to trust God in ways, and God's brought healing and hope to your life. You are one of God's choicest counselors to speak into other people who are in the midst of those circumstances. Sometimes our pain shapes our calling and what our purpose is supposed to be. We also need to ask, what life does your life produce in others? What is it that your life produces in other people? When you're around other people, what brings joy? What brings hope? What brings calmness to chaos? What brings gifting? I think we need to pause and ask ourselves that question, because if your life doesn't bring a spark to somebody else's life this next week, we need to go, okay, Jesus, am I even with you? Right? I need to bring a spark of life to something, because God's put a spark of life in me. Where is it resonating with other people? Where is it connecting? Where do they have those conversations and people go, I just love being around you for this. You make me laugh. You make me smile. I feel comfortable when I'm around you. What is it about your life that brings life to others? Another, what do other people affirm in you? I was listening this week to communicator that many of you know. He's gifted, and he's pastor, and people listen to him all over the world. He says, you know what, I never once heard an audible voice say, you need to be a pastor. I never once heard an audible voice, this is your calling. He said, but when I was a teenager, my pastor would have me sometimes get up and pray. And afterwards he said, you know what, when you get up and you pray, the whole room changes. There's something about when you pray, when you talk about God, it sparks something in other people. That's a gift God's placed inside of you. You can't create that on your own. And you're like, oh, I never even saw that. I never even thought about it. What is it that other people notice in you, in your life? 2 more questions. What are you compelled to pursue? What just drives you? I remember when I was driven to finish my doctoral work. I didn't, on paper, it was the stupidest decision ever, right? It's really expensive and tiring and exhausting, and we're broken. I don't ever want to see a book again in my life. Like that's kind of the outcome. But as a result, I'm like, no, there's a platform, an opportunity to speak to people about mental health issues, to speak to people about their kids, to have opportunities to go because God has compelled something in me to say, no, I can't just sit back and do nothing. Was there any free time to do this? No. You have to create it. Your family sacrifices, but you're compelled to do it. And the other one is what even opportunity is just in front of you now. There might just be an opportunity to serve. There just might be an opportunity to encourage someone. There might be an opportunity to give like we gave this morning. There was an opportunity to give and you responded. And God is able to come and to move and to work within us. See, you need to put yourself in a place where you can see God and say, God, there is something you've placed within me that will show the rest of the world who you are. What is that? How can I partner with you? See, we're not just to be content with what we're going through in life. We shouldn't be confused by looking at the wrong things. We can't just compare ourselves with other people, and we can't create a counterfeit purpose. This is God's story. We join him to be a part of it. I mentioned before Bob Goff and how he's an attorney and said legal consulate for the nation of Uganda. And he tells a story when he's wrestling with, okay, what does that mean? Why does he have that purpose? What's all happened? And they had a neighbor that lived across the street from them, and she was a young widow in her early 50s. And they just started having a friendship with her. And the kids loved to go over because she would bake cookies, because that was when the kids would come eat the cookies. That was fun. And they'd tell her stories and show her drawings, and they just developed a relationship. There was one particular day, it's like, he called her Carol, and he's like, what's going on? And her same spark wasn't in her eye. She said, I was just diagnosed with cancer, and it's not good. So Bob looks at her and goes, okay, be right back. And he just leaves, which is kind of Bob. He's all gas, no brake. Maybe you know that kind of person, right? And he just leaves, and he runs to the store, and he comes back a little bit later. He knocks at the door, and he hands her a walkie-talkie. He takes the walkie-talkie. He says, I want you to put this by your bed. And then he leaves and runs over to his house with the other walkie-talkie, and he just kind of does the little staticky thing. He says, hey, Carol, are you there? Bob, is that you? And they started whenever she needed to talk to somebody, even if it was late at night. Says when she's all by herself and overwhelmed with all the pain and the doubts and the process. So just lean over and push the button on the walkie-talkie, and we'll talk to you. We'll be there for you. Time went on, and she wasn't doing very well, and he looked at her one day and says, have you ever had something that you want to do, something on your bucket list that you've never gotten to do before? She said, I've never TP'd a house. She goes, let's go do it. And before he realized, she had gone into the other room, pulled out a whole bunch of toilet paper, and said, let's go. And he didn't want to, he's like, usually people do this at night. This is 4:00 in the afternoon. But so they had a mutual friend, so they drive over to the mutual friend's house, and he's like, she's got an arm. She starts throwing toilet paper over the trees, and perfect timing, a cop pulls down the road and sees them toilet papering the house, and he turns on the lights, and he comes out and he goes, toilet papering someone's house is a misdemeanor. And Bob looks at her and goes, well, I have diplomatic immunity and she has cancer, so do your best. And they started teasing with her how life was going to be in prison and how she wasn't going to like the food, and, because they realized what was happening. And when she got so sick that she was in the hospital full time, there was a day that he snuck into the hospital quietly, and he handed a walkie-talkie to the nurse. He says, will you place this under Carol's pillow? And he snuck into the other side of the room behind the curtain and laid in the other bed and went, hey, Carol, are you there? And she finds the walkie-talkie, and she calls back. She says, Bob, is that you? So many times we think our purpose needs to be this grand, big platform. And God has designed you to bring hope, to bring meaning, to bring purpose, to bring life, to bring grace, and to bring forgiveness to the people in the world so that the people in your world, so that they can see him. It's through you that they will see him. That's your purpose. That's why we lean into him. That's why we say we want to discover how you've created us, God. In fact, this is why Jesus went to the cross. Jesus went to the cross because he wanted to make sure that everyone could be a part of being a part of his purpose, a part of his story. He wanted to remove every barrier that there was. He would not allow selfishness and counterfeit calling and confusion and those things to dominate us and keep us from our purpose. And so he went to the cross and he defeated sin and the grave so we could find. And then he said he went back to heaven so the Holy Spirit could come. And the Holy Spirit's job is to be with you every day, every moment, empowering you to be light, empowering you to bring hope, empowering you to give peace, empowering you to bring order into the midst of chaos and confusion, empowering you to have creative ideas that nobody else saw. That's your purpose. That's what God has for you. And maybe you're here today, and you've just thought your purpose was something you had to do on your own, but you're realizing that today, your purpose is found in Jesus. It's found in him alone. Can we pray? God, we are so grateful that you seek us out, that you come to find us, because you have placed within each and every one of us something so beautiful and so special and so unique. God, in this room, there is purpose, there is beauty, there is hope, there is encouragement, there is life, there is love that is unending because we find it in you. God, I pray for CR First, will you help us to be a people that helps others see who you are? That we don't just come to church, but that we learn, that we encourage each other, and we go out into the week, and we are your church. We are your people. We are your voice. We are bringing your hope and your life and your encouragement and your mercy to the community, to those that you love and you want to reach. You know, there might be some of you that are here this morning and this week you kind of even wondered, is there even enough purpose in your life to just even move past the weekend? Do I even count enough? Do I even matter enough that I should even make it another week even here on this earth? And if that's you, while no one else is looking around, I just want you to look up and make eye contact with me. Because for some of you, I want to speak to you. I want to help you. I want you to understand that your life is beautiful. That God has placed something in you that's unique. That God has created you for something special, that he's not done with you. That he loves you more than you can understand. He has an unconditional fervor for who you are. That you're special. That there is no one else like you. That even those up in the balcony, as I'm looking at there, like he cares for you. He's created you. He's knit you together for a purpose, for a calling. Because through you, he wants to speak to other people. Through you, he wants to bring hope and life. Through you, he wants to bring understanding and fullness. That you have more in you than you realize. That there's significance in your life that you cannot understand. That when you lean into him, he wants to work in you. And don't you dare believe the lie that the enemy's trying to whisper to you, that who you are is not important. I'm just telling you, it's taking me this long to make eye contact with each person, because there are that many that I know that realize that sometimes we think that there's not enough there, but God is not done with you. He's not finished. He's got more in you than what you realize. And if you're here this morning and maybe you've just been saying, there's been a lot of things that have been happening in my life, but I've realized I've been trying to manufacture it on my own. But today I choose Jesus. I just want to talk to you as a friend. If today is a day that you choose Jesus, I want to pray with you. He says simply, all you have to do is receive him. You don't have to do it on your own. Just ask him to forgive you for trying to do it on your own. He'll forgive you. He has come, and that's why he went to the cross. That's why the Holy Spirit is here to bring life and hope to you.